Welcome, folks, to Squeaky Wheel, podcast number 9. With me, as always, is my friend and co-host, the president, Lawrence Gervais. Folks, I'm Ross Memphis Pambrun, and today, Lawrence and I are going to be hitting on some heavy hitter topics. But to get us started, Lawrence, tell us about yourself.
Well, it's been an enjoyable week. There's lots of vitamin D out there, so I encourage people to go get some sun, take their zinc, their multivitamins, get their exercise, get lots of sleep. It's only going to help this COVID thing if you get it, build your immune system. And don't invest in Donald Trump's stock or whatever when he's talking about his drug. Kind of keep that to the side, but definitely work on yourself. And that's what I've been doing. So hopefully you guys will see me. I'll just be darker and darker and darker, a shade every week.
Well, there's absolutely everything good about this sunshine right now. It is absolutely fantastic. And you're right, though we probably should have bought stock in it. We didn't, whatever, hydroxychloroquine, whatever the one is that he's talking about now. Yeah, does definitely make for some interesting conversation. Folks, as you know me, I'm Ross Memphis Pambrun. I'm the captain. And this is, it's always fun, Lawrence, when we get a chance to chat. And I know today, one of our current issues is one that's set a big standard for what happens within the nation and what's happening within our provinces. But folks, to give you a little bit, as you've heard on the Squeaky Wheel and those who continue to follow us, and thank you for following us and subscribing to us, more importantly, Lawrence and I usually start off, we talk a little bit about coffee, some of our current issues. Today's guest is the Region 3 Consultation Coordinator, Nicole Shepherd. So I'm kind of excited to have finally, this will engage her regarding the Daniels decision and some of the other decisions. We'll talk, that's our portion of Métis Connections. We'll teach you how to connect with us, what to expect in future broadcasts, and today's rant that Lawrence and I tend to engage in. So today's coffee, Lawrence, actually comes from the called Bolt Action. Somebody gave me this bag. This specific one is called Overwatch. Outstanding. They're not, though you can buy them in stores. I don't exactly know where this group is from Edmonton, and they are about precision coffee, which I guess is probably where the Bolt Action portion comes from. So last week we had talked about Phil and Sebastian coffee. We talked about reimagining Calgary, and we had the wonderful and very artistic and Nashville bound, and Nashville coming back from Alberta and Winnipeg girl and or such, the St. Martin, I think, out of Manitoba. We had Lori Cole as our guest. So though we're changing our conversation as we've moved out of Stampede from a bit of the art into some of the more challenging energy questions that are coming up, our current issue today that I wanted to ask you about is your knowledge and that experience, and we'll open that dialogue with Nicole, the Daniels decision. So just touch a little bit on the Daniels decision that started around or heard by the Supreme Court in October of 2015, and the case was won, as it would be, and I think rewarded somewhat posthumously to Mr. Daniels, April 14th of 2016. So this was landmark. What does that mean?
If you go back to Confederation time when it was encroaching into Western Canada, which it was doing, Louis Riel, sort of made his historical demands to say, yes, you can come this way, but you have to recognize the people who dwell here. And he was not only saying that for Métis, he was also saying that for First Nation folks. And that's outlined in the Manitoba Act and things like that. But when the rebellions happened, Canada just completely forgot about that fiduciary responsibility that they had in place in Section 9122. So what has happened over the next generations after generation is, the recognition in the 80s that we were Section 35, to the big question of, what's going to happen for Métis people. And, it took a individual in Harry Daniels to actually go through that experience and, representing the non-status, because at that time he was the president of the Congress of Aboriginal People, which was CAP, which represented urban sort of Aboriginal people. And this decision actually lays down specific requirements of Canada and their responsibility as of 1869 or 1867, right? When they were sort of forming the government. Sorry.
Yeah.
And there was a, certain fiduciary responsibility that they haven't sort of adapted to. And it's been 154 years now that now Canada has to acknowledge that they did have a responsibility. And this is a Supreme Court decision. So it's a Crown decision. And it's kind of a step above government. It's not attached to government, but it outlines, yes, you have to deal with them, right? So, it was very significant to us. Harry Daniels, put the case law in his son's name because he knew that it would outlive him. And I do believe it took about 17 years for it to actually be decided. But it was unanimous at the Supreme Court. But they also outlined that if you leave Métis out of programs, you're going to have impacts in that community. And that's what those kind of judges had all agreed upon, that you're going to leave impacts in that community if you continuously leave them out of what they're supposed to be given. So, that, of course, led to the Métis Nation Accord about a year later in April 2017, which outlined a lot of our agreements we currently have as Métis Nation of Alberta.
So this impact and when this decision was made, and I know it was celebrated, and it was celebrated by the Métis people, I think we're still learning about it. And I know as we bring on Nicole Shepherd, we're going to definitely start to understand how that impact is rolling out to the community. And I know that the people in the energy world who move through this province, through the treaty nation, through the settlements, that we're starting to see more of that engagement. So let's
well, I think, and for what you're saying though, the treaties people, they were beginning the relationship since 1 through 12, right? And what they don't remember is that the original agreement was signed prior to Treaty 1 being signed with the Métis. And because we had a rebellion, that Canada just felt, well, let's not acknowledge that anymore. Let's just work on this relationship moving forward.
Right.
And when the settlements have kind of formed, up north, the original 12 to 8, they kind of just said, well, here's the Métis community we talk to. And the general, the Métis Settlement Council is kind of who we just speak to. But now with this Métis Nation Accord, the Métis Nation across Canada from, here to Ontario have been making, provincial agreements with Canada on how they sort of operate. So it's just new form adopting, 466,000 more Métis people to the actual table. And as long as it's a meaningful practice with government, then the Métis Nation will progress and, we'll all be happy, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, let's bring Nicole Shepherd into this conversation now. And let's welcome her to the Squeaky Wheel. Folks, with us today, for those of you who are listening and for those of you who are watching, we have the ever charming and a very good friend of both Lawrence and ours, Nicole Shepherd, who is the consultation coordinator for the Métis Nation, but specifically her role being with Métis Nation Region 3. Now, before we rush into the tough-hitting, hard-hitting topics of the Daniels decision, Nicole, tell us a little bit about yourself, because the folks out there often hear about Lawrence and Ross. This is a chance for us to talk with you.
For sure. I'm happy to be here. So I started working with Métis Nation of Alberta as the consultation coordinator for Region 3 in July of 2018. I'm a provincial employee who represents the region and supports the locals. Prior to that, I worked in oil and gas in several different roles while continuing my education. I was born in Edmonton and raised in Calgary from about 2 years old on. I've spent some time in other provinces, but most of my life I've lived in Alberta. And yeah, that's the shortest version.
Now, I know that I have a wonderful picture that I'll have to send off to our editor. That's actually the three of us down at the Stampede grounds, because we rarely ever get the opportunity for the three of us to sort of get a chance to engage that way. Lawrence is so lucky because he gets to work with you all the time. Whereas for me, for as often as I get to be in the office, I do always get a chance to pick up something every time we have a conversation. So, Lawrence, we were talking about the Daniels decision, and can you use that to lead into some of the conversation we were having that we wanted to ask Nicole? Because her role is the sort of right at the forefront of our role within the regional office.
Well, Daniel's decision is, it's precedented as, a big major piece to our history, but it's on that continuity plane because, Louis Riel, when he was negotiating with Canada prior to Confederation and them encroaching into the West, really advocated for Métis rights and language rights and certainly for First Nations rights. That's kind of written in Manitoba Act. And, when the rebellions happened, Canada just kind of took a step backwards. And Daniel's decision really cemented the fact that, yes, Canada had a fiduciary responsibility to Métis people, not as of 2016, but as of, 1867 when, Canada was actually formed. So it goes right back to Section 9124 and has kind of ignited that section to the Constitution. But of course, it's been, reworked ever since then. And now we're looking at ways for us as a Canadian government to actually work with the Métis Nation. And it was unprecedented in that way. And consultation for us is actually a very key element to our nation, because now our voices can be heard on a federal level, because now we have a federal agreement with the Métis Nation Accord that was signed in April 2017. And as a result, you're going to see more programming towards 466,000 Métis that were left out, basically.
And so then based on that, and Nicole, this would be your chance that you get a chance to educate me. But the one thing I've always, that we've talked about a little bit in the office, but the idea of the duty to consult. Take us through that role when it comes to your role and that impact for the region and province, and I guess and the nation.
Absolutely. The Crown has a duty to consult with Indigenous people when there is a potential for an activity to impact Indigenous rights. Now that we have consultation offices and rules like mine within the MNA, it ensures we have a tool of protection for Métis rights, claims, and interests, which is vital for Métis culture, traditions, and quality of life, as well as the environment. Right now, as of July of 2018, that was the month I was hired. That was also the month the consultation agreement was signed between the Canadian government and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Region 3 has a consultation protocol in place, which establishes a process for consultation that ensures all Métis citizens in the region are represented when consultation is triggered. So the protocol, it creates it creates structure for consultation in the region. There is a consultation committee currently in Region 3. The committee consists of a provincial designate who represents the provincial president, Audrey Patra, the Region 3 president, Lawrence Gervais. He knows he's on that. So, and each local president, so Jeanette Hansen out of Medicine Hat, Adam Browning out of Lethbridge, Daryl Campbell in Pincher Creek area, Brian Lazat in Red Deer Stettler area, Bernie Olette in Rocky Mountain House, and Joe Pimlott in Calgary, which makes 8 in total sitting on the committee. So basically, when a federal project, the process begins with the Canadian Energy Regulator, or the CER. It provides the proponent with like a list of Indigenous nations that could be impacted by project activities. And as of July of 2018, we're on that list. So when they get that list, and the federal projects are like projects on waterways, that projects that cross provincial borders, the rail lines, things like that. So those types of projects, the proponent has access to contact us, and they're being told there's possible impacts to contact us. And each region has a point of contact that the proponent has access to in order to start the consultation process and notify the nation of possible impacts to that community. So I'm that point of contact for Region 3. And the types of impacts, it could be anything from grave sites to settlement remains, buried artifacts, plants, harvesting, ceremony happening in the area, environmental concerns. That's probably not all of them, but I can't think of any more. But then from that point, I notify the consultation committee of the project, and we determine together if there are any possible impacts to the M&A community by involving knowledge holders, elders, conducting public engagement and data review. So that's basically it in a nutshell for federal projects. Provincial projects, however, we do go through the regulatory bodies. The same process applies, except we have to search out most of those applications.
Sorry, and why is that?
It is because we do not have a consultation agreement with the provincial government. And that is actually a huge problem because that's where I believe most of the projects lie. So that list I talked about where the CER would give that to the proponent, the company, right? We're not on that list for provincial projects. So they don't know what they don't know, and they don't contact us. And if we don't contact them or we miss it, then we actually not only is there a possibility for grave sites, artifacts, these areas to be destroyed that are very important to our culture, but it also leaves it open for us to actually delay projects, which we don't want to do because we'll see a project that went through the process. The consultation process happens prior to the project. And if we're not concluded and we don't know and we don't find out about it, we end up seeing it on the news or what have you, have to write a statement of concern, which holds up the project, which costs everyone money, and jobs are just important to us as every other Canadian. So it's not where we want to be. We want to be on that list. We want that provincial agreement. And we actually had a petition going around weekly prior to COVID that we're sending in weekly to the Alberta government. We were working on a provincial consultation agreement prior to the elections in April, but since the new government has come in, it's been delayed, and we haven't heard very much. So,
Lawrence, do you find that?
Can I just give a little background? On,
please.
The difference between Canada and Alberta government. Canada recognizes the Métis homeland because we've had to set a base for our footprint prior to the establishment of Canada and Western places. So a lot of our mapping is used on the script commissions that were done in the 1800s, and from there they've pulled out enough data, enough geographical information to know where the Métis homeland in it does include Southern Alberta also. On the Alberta government end, they firmly are sort of stuck in a bureaucracy because Persecorn, the challenge there and with us as Métis Nation people was we never got a chance to actually push our history through that the Alberta Court of Appeal. And when we lost that case and the judge said we don't want to hear that end, it left us in a bit of a route because, in the script commission, it's very clear on where our footprint is too in this area. And that sort of evidence was never actually heard. And then there was other cases that, issues that happened during that whole process. And I won't get into all that. Maybe that could be a whole other episode. But this court case advises, cabinet at the Alberta government on how you relate to the Métis Nation down here in Region 3. And they abide by it. They're very stuck. They say, yes, this is what we listen to. And, that happened prior to Daniels, which was a long time ago. And one thing that's a very, very big, significant challenge to us is when we hear at the Daniels decision that, the judges brought up that if you leave out Métis in communities, you're going to have severe impacts in that community when you don't allow them to access any programs And, that message needs to go to Alberta government so they understand that when you continuously leave Métis Nation people out and you go to the other regions and you offer programming there, not only it sends a bad message to our Métis Nation members and our citizens and the people that reside down here, but you're going to leave impacts in our community by leaving us out culturally. And if stuff like harvesting, for instance, you leave that out of Region 3, well then what do we have to pass on to the next generation? We have to, think of that too as a Métis Nation people. So you are going to definitely leave impacts. And I just wanted to note, we don't have a current agreement, and who knows, we might have one 6 months from now, but we know that it has to happen very, very soon. And to align ourselves with the other government and what they're doing, because Canada actually has an agreement with us already. So I think that's important.
Nicole, you're quite active within the Métis community, and I know I was there when you were bringing the petition around. And I think this is helping explain a little bit more, both for me and for our listeners. Folks, there's always an opportunity that if you want to ask the questions of Lawrence as an elected official, or Nicole, who's in a position that has a large outreach to both the region, all of the locals, as well as your representation. Because I get a chance to see you, Nicole, and we get to see you at the events and things like that, where did that personal interest and desire come from? I know that right now, folks, if you want to learn a little bit more about consultation, please go to métis3.org and you'll see Nicole's notes under the consultation area, and the ability to contact her, and her bio is there. But I want to know just a little bit more about where Nicole came from.
Yeah, no, that's not a problem at all. My story is a pretty common one, I think, for people around my age and younger. But most of my family, they reside in Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan and surrounding area. My Métis family. Growing up, I knew my mother's side of the family were Métis. I didn't think I was, and I was told I wasn't by family members, and I think they believed that I wasn't, because I really do think they thought it was based off of blood content, which it's not. And then when I was a teenager, I actually lived in the area where the Region 3 office was, and I wanted to find out more and what the requirements were and just what the culture was about. And I think that's when I really started to realize things about myself and my family. Like growing up, I thought the type of music and dancing and my grandmother knowing Korean French words was a my family thing.
Yeah.
But it was a Métis thing. It was a cultural thing. And I didn't put that together growing up, because you know what you know when you're growing up. And then as an adult, I wanted to learn more, and I started volunteering on my days off when I used to work up north. And it wasn't very much at the beginning. And then when I started my own company in the city and I was in the city more, I started volunteering more. And Marlene Lance actually really encouraged me a lot and promoted me a lot. And I learned so much, and just being around the community members. And then I didn't realize what an amazing journey it was going to turn out to be, but it did. And I'm very lucky to have this job and be able to listen to the knowledge holders and the elders and just be immersed in the culture. And it's funny too, because I say that my story is common because as an adult, I've been going to all these events, like you said, and all of a sudden I'll see somebody I grew up with, right? And they're Métis too, but we didn't talk about that, and we didn't know if we were or not. And we had so much in common, and it's just so neat. And if you think about it, in Calgary alone, in the 2016 Canadian census, over 18,000 people self-identified just in the city as being Métis. Now, we only have a little bit over 5,800 in the city that actually have their MNA citizenship cards, which I really think speaks to the identity crisis and stories like mine that contribute to it. They either don't know they're Métis, or they say they are on the census, but they're not sure if they really are, and a whole bunch of other things that go into that. And even Region 3 as a whole, I mean, it's over 34,000 in Region 3 that self-identified on the 2016 Canadian census, and over 13,000 that actually have their MNA citizenship cards. I think it's close to actually 14,000, but that huge gap. And it's just something that these people are probably like me. They probably are fiddlers and jiggers, and they may not even know it's called jigging, but they do it, and they're
Yeah.
Métis and they're not sure, right? So it's just something that I really think we need to shed light on and get these people active in our community. And it just turned out to be such a rewarding experience for me, and I'm just surrounded by people that are so rich in culture, and it's just really neat. It's just I'm very, very lucky for the being able to work for MNA in the capacity that I do.
Well, you, at each of the events, whenever you get the opportunity, you do make impact there. You make impact within our community. And thank you. And thank you for sharing that message, because the people who do come on here, I think, are becoming more comfortable, want to share the message. And Lawrence and I invite a lot of people in here who, though they may not, sort of have that traditional wearing a sash every day, they're starting to become more comfortable with it. So thank you for sharing that. Folks, important that you always know Lawrence is willing to pick up the phone at any time. As soon as we all get a chance, we're going to have more coffees together. I want to thank Nicole Shepherd. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on here. Thank you for teaching us a little bit about consultation. Lawrence, anything you'd like to say to close out this conversation?
No, I mean, it's just, we've said a lot of heavy stuff, but I also want to let everybody know that Nicole is a very big asset. She's our first step. She's our front line in terms of industry and government and schools. And if you want to know about who we are as Métis Nation, get a hold of Nicole Shepherd.
You're absolutely right.
That's right. But sometimes I have to answer all the questions though too. So
No,
fantastic. Thank you, Nicole, for coming on the Squeaky Wheel.
No problem. And just one last thing, a message to all your viewers. We do a lot of studies in consultation, traditional knowledge, and land use studies. And if you think there's something out there that we may not have in our data sets and want to share, please reach out. If it's cabin remains or plants or what have you, you can reach out to myself, to President Lawrence Gervais, or any of the local presidents, and we'd love to hear from you, because it really is people like you that make these studies come together.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for your time. Folks, you know where you heard it here. Reach out at any time. Thanks, Nicole.
No problem. Take care.
So now, Lawrence, everything that Nicole said, and then I know our earlier banter that we were talking, this is the heavy issue when it comes to the economy and the relationship with the Métis people. Everything that I heard from Nicole and everything I heard from you, because you two are at the forefront of what's happening when it comes to energy and that conversation. Is there anything you think you should expound on as your role when it comes to that? I know that the first point of contact is Nicole when it comes to consultation, but does that mean that she generally comes right to you after to say, here's some experience that I have when it comes to precedents, here's some things that are happening, here's who is engaging? What role do you take when she brings that?
Well, as an elected leader, you kind of have a responsibility to the nation in terms of how the bylaw structure is. So, the real legal representative is myself.
Okay.
So, when she does, do these consultations and these agreements and, just whatever that may happen, she's very inclusive and is very letting me know. But really, at the end of the day, it's sort of my decision of how we proceed. If it's yay or nay, or we just move forward on the dialogue, or if it's a real concern, then it's kind of put up on my shoulders a little bit, because that's who I'm elected for, is to represent the 14,000 members down over here, right? So, she's kind of the one that kind of makes the arrangements, and it's a very vital role, because if in the past, leaders have been doing it themselves. And
Right.
with these agreements with Canada, it kind of leaves the doorway open for more business to be happening in the M&A. And that's a lot of workload to put on your leaders, right? So,
Yeah. And I know I've seen this from you before, and even when I've presented sort of conversation or pieces of paper, the good thing about you is you tend to read them. This is not just a situation where I see Lawrence do this without it. So without her doing the work, and the bulk of the work is just getting more and more as more groups are aware of the requirement for consultation. Yeah, you get to see them all. And folks, I know that when you have these kind of questions, this is the guy you've elected. This is the guy that people turn to. And with 14,000 citizens down in our area, yeah, and everybody having a different opinion and different idea. Though we do, still have our mandate and direction by the province. Yeah, Lawrence, thank you for reading them, because I just usually get to hear about them. I'm usually not the person who has to end up reading them all.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you're as a leader, as a Métis person, you have a responsibility. I mean, you take the oath, right? And
yeah,
and I think for me, it is true. There's so many different viewpoints about industry and government and education, and some are yay or some are nay, right? And you kind of have to go in between and really decipher what people's viewpoints are and bring them to the table. I think that's the main goal as a leader. If you're put in these rooms and you're having dialogue with industry or government or these school leaders, that you really need to show both sides of the coin, right? And it's not just one-sided, right? And I think that's important for any leader.
And I think, yeah, absolutely. That's what happens, though, is sometimes people, because everybody, when they bring their opinion forward, they're hearing their side. It's the intelligent people that want to listen to both sides so that they can make a more informed decision. Yeah. So, folks, be one of the more intelligent people. Just like we tell you to wash your hands, and it sounds like wearing masks is going to be the thing coming here as of August 1st in this province. You don't have to wait till August 1st. You can wear your masks now. So, Lawrence, I'm going to end us there, but I'd like to say thank you to our listeners, to our subscribers. Make sure you listen to the Métis, follow us, métis3.org, subscribe to us on YouTube, listen to us and email us at tsw@métis3.org, and follow our Métis Minutes, because I know we talk a fair bit about that. The one thing I wanted to rant about a little bit today was that those of you folks who choose not to wear protection, you can err on the side of respecting other people's safety. And there's nothing so bad about wearing a mask when you're in public right now.
And masks really, they're $30 on Amazon for a really nice one.
Yeah.
Nice, fashionable one.
Yeah.
If you want to go with the plain blue ones or the plain white ones, go ahead. But, it's really not cost effective. You're not going to pass out by ingesting some of your carbon dioxide. A lot of it does escape the mask anyways, but it protects others. That's the most important. And folks, be empathetic for other people. That's part of the conversation.
Think about others, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So on that note, and that little bit of a rant, because this is coming down the line, whether you like it or not, and I do like it for our protection. Thank you to our guest, Nicole, and her time spent with us. Thank you to the use of our traditional lands and the Métis settlement land. Thank you to our Mother Earth. Thank you to our seniors and elders, many of who have been on our program before. Thank you for listening. Thank you to my co-host and my friend Lawrence Gervais, the president, signing off from the Squeaky Wheel, and best wishes to everybody out there in Radio Land. Keep the fire burning, and Lawrence, I look forward to our next conversation.